Oh no, not more leader talk. Hold on, here we go.
That's like butter.
That's right, friends. Brian Flechsig of Mad River Outfitters, the Midwest Fly Fishing Schools, amongst other things. And welcome back to more leader talk. Before we jump into it, a word from our sponsor, Mad River Outfitters. And here at Mad River Outfitters, we have a bunch of new t-shirts, a bunch of new merch and a bunch of new t-shirts. And we wanted to feature this one because it's black and it has a muskie on it, or you could pretend it's a pike. I think it's supposed to be a muskie. We'll call it a pusky. So it's the Mad River Outfitters Pusky shirt. And I'm telling you, these shirts are rad looking. They are wildly comfortable, and every one of them is just banging. So you can go to madriveroutfitters.com, click on the MRO merch. Of course, there's a link down below me, and pick up one of these banging Mad River Outfitters t-shirts. I was just kidding. We don't have sponsors. It's only Mad River Outfitters. So we depend on your support so we can keep talking about leaders. All right. Well, that's right, friends. I apologize, but we're going to talk more about leaders. And I have a feeling it's not the last that we're going to talk about leaders. But, and first and foremost, we absolutely appreciate all your questions. And once again, send those questions to admin@madriveroutfitters.com, or you can pick up the phone and give us a call. Unfortunately, there's no way we can answer questions in the comments here on YouTube. You'll see that over time that, the folks that do respond to the comments always recommend you call us here at the shop. We do monitor emails and the phones, of course, but we love your questions. In fact, I answer questions like 6 hours a day, and a lot of them about leaders, and they're much appreciated. But there's a lot of stuff and a lot of misconceptions that I've been hearing most recently, and I just wanted to touch on a few of those things, and I think you'll probably learn a couple things here. So first and foremost, let's remember this, okay? Let's remember that a good leader starts in the butt. I can't remember who said that, but it might have been in one of our videos. And yes, there is a t-shirt coming. It's going to be banging merch. A good leader starts in the butt. And to go back to this, for example, in a contact leader, okay? A contact leader is one for contact fly fishing, where the leader is going to go out perfectly straight at the target. The rod is going to come down, the line is going to go under your index finger, and you have contact with the fly. Now, this is streamer fishing for trout, for smallmouth. This is all saltwater fishing. This is pike, muskie, poppers, striper fishing. I mean, just go down the list. Actually, most of what we do around here at Mad River Outfitters is contact fly fishing. It's what I typically prefer to do. And so therefore, I need this butt section to be good. I need the energy to flow from the tip of the fly line right into that butt section. And then I'm going to taper it down until I reach the final destination, which is my tippet. And my tippet is often determined by the size, weight, and wind resistance of the fly. And then when you get into the bigger than trout stuff, that tippet is also going to be determined by how big a fish, how toothy a fish that you're after. That tippet has to withstand the fight of the fish. But your butt section may also, you might want that butt section to collapse in the case of a non-contact. Non-contact fly fishing is either dry fly fishing or nymph fishing, where you don't have contact with the fly. The fly is bouncing along the stream bottom or riding on the surface of the water as if it were unattached to your leader. And in this case, this is my dry fly setup for my 4-weight, and we want that butt section to collapse. We don't want a good butt section. We don't want that transfer of energy perfectly from the fly line to the butt section of the leader, because we want that leader to collapse on the surface of the water, okay? But a good leader starts in the butt. And one of the things that I think a lot of folks are confused about, I get a lot of questions from folks asking me, how do I know the diameter of the tip of my fly line so they can match the butt section up? Well, it's not the diameter, friends, okay? It's the stiffness. Let's call it the stiffness. It's actually the overall mass, which is some kind of calculation of the stiffness related to the diameter that I can't even explain to you. But it's not the diameter, it's the stiffness. So, for example, people tell me all the time, they say, well, what diameter do I need to match up with a 6-weight? Well, here's the thing that you're forgetting, is that I need to know what material you are using. What stiffness of material are you using? Because if you're using, for example, if you're using Maxima Clear or Rio Saltwater, it's going to be 1 diameter. Let's say on an 8-weight, it's going to be 22 thousandths. Well, if you're using Cortland monofilament leader material, it might be 24 thousandths, okay? Because this is less stiff than this, so it's going to be different. If you're using Orvis Super Strong, it might be 28 thousandths because it's the most limp of them all, okay? This is really kind of trouty kind of stuff, and I would not typically use this for contact fly fishing. The first question that you have to ask yourself is, what brand monofilament are you using, and what is the inherent stiffness, okay? So while we're talking about that, and certainly if you have questions, you can send us an email at the shop. Please know that I am I kind of know the things that we sell. I don't know all of the brands out there in the world, but I can certainly help you out and tell you what I would recommend from the brands that we sell. But in a nutshell, just a quick overview, some of the leader and tippet materials that we sell. For contact fly fishing, again, you want that energy to flow all the way to the fly and the leader to lay out straight. We're typically using Maxima Clear, but if you've been paying attention the past couple of years, it's been very hard to get, although we're hoping that that's going to resolve itself here shortly. But if Maxima Clear is not available, the Rio saltwater material, the saltwater mono from Rio, we believe, and don't quote me on this, we believe it's the same stuff. It is made in Germany, and if you compare the diameter per the pound test and the stiffness, it's essentially exactly the same stuff. You can mix and match these two. Next up in stiffness is the Cortland monofilament leader material. It is not as stiff as these two, but it's not as limp as, say, Ultra Green or Orvis Super Strong, okay? It's right in between, I would say, Maxima Ultra Green. And we do use it. You can use it for contact fly fishing. Just know that you probably have to go a little thicker in diameter in the butt section to get that nice bell curve flow of energy. Okay, so you're going to have to go up in diameter if you're using the Cortland mono leader material. Maxima Ultra Green. Maxima Ultra Green is more limp than these three, and we typically use Ultra Green for sinking and sink tip lines. Okay, sinking and sink tip lines tend to be a little bit more pliable than a floating line, and we've just found that the energy transfer from a sink tip into Maxima Ultra Green just works extremely well. It also works a little bit better from a sinking standpoint. It's less visible than, say, Clear or the Rio saltwater. And when you're taking a fly down to a fish, having that Ultra Green kind of camouflage coloration to this material just really, really works. And then last but not least, the most supple and limp is the Orvis Super Strong. And I would really only use this, let me go back. I do use the Maxima Ultra Green for the mid sections on my Nymph leader, okay? You can also use it for dry fly leaders if you tie dry fly leaders. Orvis Super Strong is fantastic for the mid sections on Nymph leaders as well. If you can't find this Ultra Green in the diameters that you're looking for, the Orvis Super Strong stuff works just fine, and it also works great for dry fly applications. Another one that you hear us talking about is Amnesia. And I get a lot of people that think that I recommend Amnesia for the butt sections on all my leaders. I do not. It is only in my Nymph leader formula that I use the Amnesia. And it's just absolutely perfect for the butt section of a high stick nymphing leader where you're going to be throwing heavy nymphs, split shot, and probably have a strike indicator, which is usually attached on this butt section. Okay. And then again, I'll use Ultra Green or Super Strong for the mid sections on that leader. If you need a refresher, I think there's probably a link here to that Nymph leader, and maybe I'll just run through it real quick here in just a minute. But Amnesia is only for the butt sections on Nymph leaders. And then a lot of people ask me a question about dry fly leaders. And they say, well, you've covered Nymph leaders, you've covered contact leaders, you've covered sink tip and sinking line leaders, but you haven't talked about dry fly leaders. I've talked about them, but I've not shown you a formula because I don't tie dry fly leaders, okay? And there's a good reason for that. I use the Airflow poly leaders. I use the Rio Trout Versi leaders. And if you don't like those, there are some fantastic leaders, package leaders on the market that do work. In my estimation, there's some of the few package leaders that you can buy that actually do a good job. And that's the Rio Supple Flex Trout. And then Scientific Anglers has the Absolute Trout Stealth. And these are made of nice supple material, and they're going to give you that proper butt section, okay, that kind of collapses and goes limp on you, and it really works well. They also make Supple Flex Tippet, which is fantastic dry fly tippet, and then Scientific Anglers has the Absolute Stealth Tippet. So it's not about the diameter, getting back to the butt section. It's not about the diameter, it's what material are you using. So hopefully that'll help you out there quite a bit when it comes to selecting the proper diameter for the butt section. But always feel free to give us a shout here at the shop. Another question that we've been getting a lot is how do you put this all together? And I think we have covered this in a variety of different knot tying leaders that we've done over the years. But basically, first and foremost, on attaching your leader to your fly line. If you are contact fly fishing, and you're not going to be changing leaders, okay? For example, I've probably had this butt section. This is my 10 weight that I tarpon fish, I red fish with, and I pike and musky fish with. And this butt section has probably been on there for 2 or 3 years. I don't ever change, there's no reason for me to change this butt section, okay? I'm going to change out the front end, and I'm going to change out the mid sections. And then folks always ask me, well, eventually you're going to be cutting back into this. Well, sure, I'll just attach another piece on there and make it 4.5 foot or whatever, 5 foot. Make it 5 foot again. 1 extra knot, it's not going to hurt anything. So if you're not changing out leaders very often, you want to use a snell, which we've shown you in quite a few videos, or a nail knot, and they're basically the same knots. It's just a different way of tying them, okay? I carry, this is my custom-made Flip Pallot snell tool, and you can also do the same thing if you straighten out a paper clip. You can easily tie that snell with that. If you don't have either one of those and you want to tie a traditional nail knot, the Tie Fast knot tire is the way to go. I think we have shown you that, but we'll probably redo it because I think the old one is about 20 years old. So anyway, the tie fast knot tire works great for the nail knot and the snell. If you are going to be changing leaders, for example, on a given day, and again, we did a video on this, but just to refresh, if you only have a 5-weight and you might throw a streamer, you might throw a nymph, and you might throw a dry, you're going to want to stick with loops. Loop to loop is the way to go, okay? And you can either leave the factory loop on, or you can cut it off and you can snell on a piece of the proper diameter butt section and then tie a perfection loop, okay? And of course, we have a video. It's right there. That video is called How to Fix Your Broken Loop. And even if you cut your loop off, it qualifies as broken. So you'd have to fix it. And you're going to tie on a piece of the proper diameter. You're going to tie a perfection loop. And then you can go loop to loop. You can loop on a contact or streamer leader. You can loop on a nymph leader. Or you can loop on a Versi leader or a proper dry fly leader. So the perfection loop is something that you'd want to look into if you're going to be using a loop-to-loop system. And then for attaching butt sections to mid-sections, basically, if it's bigger than, say, 11 thousandths, which is 0x, and almost all my butt sections and mid-sections are going to be thicker than 11 thousandths, thicker than 0x. So 12 thousandths on up to 17, 20, 22 thousandths. For anything bigger than 0x, I'm going to use a blood knot. Okay? Once you get down into the X's and you get down into, say, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, you're going to use a surgeon's knot. Or you can use a surgeon's knot. You can still use a blood knot if you want. It just the surgeon's knot is typically a little bit easier once you get down into the X's. Okay. So I think those are some of the questions that we've been hearing a lot of recently about matching up that butt section. A lot of folks very confused as to whether they should cut their loop or not cut their loop, and you've got to understand the context of that. The only time I'm going to tell you to cut your loop is if we can tie that butt section on and that butt section doesn't change. It's just, I mean, literally, that butt section might be on there for years, or at least the life of the fly line. I'm just not redoing this. A lot of folks are chiming in and asking how many times can you snell onto this before you cut into the fly line? Well, I mean, I can't imagine I would ever do this more than twice on the life of a fly line. That's just not how that system works. But to answer that question, there usually is about 4 to 6 inches of grace period on the tip before you start getting into the taper. So you can do this a few times and it's not going to ruin the taper of the fly line per se. But if you're going to be changing leaders that often, then stick with loops, okay, and just deal with the consequences. For nymph fishing and dry fly fishing, loops aren't bad anyway. The only reason we don't love them for contact is they just kind of mess with that transfer of energy, okay? And for more context, a lot of folks, there's a video that we did with Flip Pallot, and I want you all to stay tuned because we're heading back to Florida, post-pandemic Flip Pallot. And I'm telling you, post-pandemic, he is better than ever. Based on the particular fly line that you have. So we've cut the loop. We know how that goes. You've been known to call those evil or evil. Evil. So we can't wait to get to Florida and share more Flip with you, so stay tuned. But anyhow, we did a video with Flip called Cut Your Loop. And in that video, we had to do a follow-up because we wanted to clarify when it's proper and when it's not and what type of leader Flip was talking about. So for those of you that do watch that video, make sure you watch episode 2 because that will really sum it up for you. So again, I think of utmost importance. Oh, let me go ahead and give you that Nymph formula again real quick because we talked about that. And it's real simple. I go 3 foot of 20-pound amnesia. Okay, and that's that stuff right there. That comes in red or green. I prefer the red. I see it a lot better. And then I'm just going to go, I'm going to step down. And you know what? The diameter on these two pieces is absolutely not even critical. I mean, you can use 12 thousandths and then you can use 9 thousandths. And that would be fine for average, say, throwing trout nymphs and what have you. And then I'm going to tie a tippet ring. Okay, and to that tippet ring, then you can attach really whatever tippet you want on there. Okay, with a nymph leader, a lot of folks are concerned about the fact that I'm making a big jump. I think this is 19 thousandths, and I'm jumping to 12 thousandths. Yes, that creates a hinge, but that's what we want. We want that nymph leader to do this. We want it to collapse and kick over. And I want you to stay tuned because we're actually this coming weekend, we're going to be filming a video on a tuck cast, and I'm going to explain to you why this leader works so well with the tuck cast. Okay, I'll give you a little hint here though. When you make a tuck cast, this leader kicks over because of that hinge perfectly, such that the nymph, the idea of a nymph leader is you want the nymph, the split shot if you're using it, and the leader, and then the strike indicator all to enter the water vertically, not horizontally like a contact leader. You want them to go in like this. The rod comes up, okay? That nymph and split shot has a better chance of sinking. You gain control of the system, start mending your line, and control behind that indicator if you're using an indicator, okay? Now, if I was making this same leader for steelhead, I might just, of course, my tippet is probably going to be 11 thousandths or 10 thousandths, so I would just real easy, just make this 14 thousandths and make this 12 thousandths. And then you can easily tie your tippet ring. I'd go with a larger tippet ring if you're steelhead fishing. And then I'm going to go, say, 0x or 1x or 2x tippet for steelhead. So it's the same leader. If you're high stick nymphing for trout with a size 14 fly, or you're high stick nymphing for steelhead with a size 8 or 10 egg or a nymph. So, but again, you want that nymph leader to kick over, okay? And that's why that leader is designed as such. So I think we described this in our last video, but I'll do it again here and kind of wrap things up. A contact leader. Okay, you want to think of your leader as a pipe, and you are a plumber of energy. And for a contact leader, I want the energy to go all the way right down that leader to the fly and be bled off enough to where we can make a good presentation. The butt section is going to match in, we'll call it stiffness, not diameter, to the tip of your fly line. You're then going to taper it, and then your tippet is going to be determined by the size, weight, and wind resistance of the fly, and be able to withstand the fight of the fish that you're after. A non-contact leader, let's say nymph, okay, you want a good butt section, which amnesia is perfect for that. It can kick over heavy flies, split shot, and strike indicators, and then you want it to collapse midway down so you get that nice tuck cast. Does this, and it bounces along the stream bottom. With your average dry fly leader, you kind of want it to be limp the whole way down. I have found that the furled leaders, I didn't bring one out here, but the Mad River Outfitters brand furled leaders, they're made of thread. They're great for smaller dries, for small flat water, and when the wind isn't blowing. If I'm trying to throw a grasshopper or a larger dry fly and it's a little bit windy, when I go out to Montana, I'm always using these poly leaders or the Rio Versi leaders because they've got a little bit more in the butt section to turn over that larger fly and into the wind, but still supple enough to give me a good dry fly presentation. So, as always, friends, I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but we are on a quest here at Mad River Outfitters to teach people the ins and outs of leaders. And it's not overly complicated. Some folks have chimed in and said, oh, that's too complicated. It's really not. I mean, I've got these 2 leader wallets. One is labeled for trout fishing. It's got my amnesia and everything I need to tie trout leaders. And then I've got a contact. I've got one of these for freshwater and then one for saltwater. My saltwater is going to contain bite tippets and wire and stuff like that. My freshwater is just going to be for bass and pike and muskie. So I can literally have 3 leader wallets. I can build my own proper leaders for everything that I would do anywhere in the world. It's not that complicated. So as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Believe it or not, we've got tons more about leaders coming your way. Hit the like button. And as always, if you have questions, send them over to admin at madriveroutfitters.com. That's ADMIN at madriveroutfitters.com. Or you can pick up the phone and give us a call. That's really always the best way to get your question answered, although we answer all email. So either way is fine. But we just appreciate you being here. We appreciate your support. And make sure you get some of those banging Mad River Outfitters t-shirts. And oh yeah, watch this video right here. It's probably about leaders. And then watch this one. It might be about leaders.